The Budget Review Subcommittee for Postsecondary Education to order in the 2022 regular session. It's good to have you here this morning. Amy, would you call the roll, please?
Representative Bojanowski.
Present in the room.
Representative Fleming.
Present in the room.
Representative Flood.
Present from home office due to discussion only agenda today. Thank you.
Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Petrie. Representative Reed.
Here.
Representative Huff. Chair Tipton.
Here. At this time, I believe Representative Bojanowski has a guest to introduce.
Yes, I would like to welcome my intern, wave over there. His name is Mark Ramsing. He was born in the Virgin Islands and currently lives in Washington, D.C. He's attending University of Louisville and studying economics and finance. And his aim after graduation is to work in cybersecurity and intelligence. So be careful. Welcome, Mark.
Okay, good to have you with us. Good to have all of you with us. Before we get into the meeting, I do want to make one announcement. As you know, this is subcommittee. It's a subcommittee of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee. Last year, Chairman Petrie initiated a new practice. In all A&R meetings, everyone who comes forward to testify will be asked to be sworn in. I have made the decision starting in January and going forward that I will follow that same practice in these subcommittee meetings. So when you come to the table to present, we'll ask you to introduce yourself for the record. Then everyone will be asked to raise their right hand and we'll have the oath. Just want to make everyone aware of that new practice. At this time, the item on our agenda today is a discussion with Kentucky State University, so please come forward. Be sure your microphones are turned on and be sure your microphones are pulled close to you. Sometimes if they're not very close, it's difficult for everyone to hear. And just when you're ready, everyone, please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Clara Ross Stamps.
I am Greg Rush, Vice President for Finance Administration.
Dr. Elaine Ferris, I'm Chair of the Kentucky State University Board of Regents.
Paul Harness, I'm a member of the Kentucky State University Board of Regents.
Okay, thank you. Would everyone raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. I do.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, please proceed with your presentation.
Let me get started. Well, good morning, Chairman, and good morning, members. We appreciate the opportunity that you've given us today to give you an update on the financial situation at Kentucky State University. And we have a brief PowerPoint we'll go through, and then we'll turn it over for questions. It's your pleasure, Chairman. The first slide, we have a summation of a lot of things that have happened over the past 6 months. As you all are aware, the Council on Postsecondary Education issued their report in November, and we've tried to highlight a number of the things in that report. Essentially, you know, the significant operating deficits that accumulated over a 3 to 4 year period have resulted in the situation that we face now, where there was a significant number of expenses and bills essentially carried forward from prior years into the current year. The university was also facing a significant structural budget deficit when President Stamps and I came on board in July. We've been able to reduce that deficit, but it's still significant. And I know that many of you have heard about the $23 million request that Representative Tipton has addressed in House Bill 250. And what that is comprised of is a number of actions that were taken by the past leadership at the university that essentially pushed expenses forward into the current fiscal year, led to a depletion of the university's cash reserves, and essentially a cash flow crisis going into this fiscal year. Senator McDaniel had asked earlier, and Chairman Tipton has asked a number of times, the university's cash position throughout the fiscal year. And at this point, the university will have to begin borrowing on a what's called a revenue anticipation note, which is similar to a line of credit, in mid to late March to continue to operate, and that line of credit will be depleted in mid-April. There's really not much from a financial standpoint that's changed since the last time we were before your committee, Chairman. Our projections are still about the same, and our projections for cash are about the same. You know, I think the board and the current leadership at KSU is committed to being accountable, being transparent, and complying with all requirements, both state, federal, contractual, anything that we have, and we've tried our best to do that over the past 6 months, and we'll continue to do so. I'll step down to some more specifics. Well, also first, what gets lost in a lot of this discussion are some of the positive things that have happened at the university over the past 4 years. You know, people have asked me often what happened, what was the money spent on, and to the best of my knowledge and what I've been able to see at this point, it was spent on a lot of things, and a lot of them were directed towards student performance. And we in hindsight have the benefit to see some things that worked and some things that didn't work. There's no excuse for, you know, excessive spending or spending far in excess of the resources that were available to the university, but there were some good things that came out of this. The graduation rate for the cohort that entered the university in 2015 is 38%. That's a historic high for the university. When I was there in 2015-16, that graduation rate was around 20%, 18, 19, 20. So moving to 38% is a significant improvement, and actually places KSU in the kind of the higher ranks of HBCUs. The fall-to-fall retention rate right now is 70%. Again, when I was at the university before, we were around 55%, and retention is the key in graduation and progression of students. And as you may or may not know, approximately 80% of our students are Pell eligible, so they're not receiving financial support in many cases from their families, and 76% are first generation. So they're also navigating kind of a different kind of bureaucracy and a different kind of process. As a result, we have to provide a lot of wraparound services and support for our students, and which leads to the university being more expensive, frankly, in some ways, and particularly a small institution, than others on a per-student basis. I want to give you an update on the recommendations that the council made in November. The report in November dealt with the financial piece of the management improvement plan. There's about 7 different items. Obviously, the financial one was the one that had to be addressed first. The council is currently in the process of working through the other recommendations as envisioned both in the governor's executive order and Chairman Tipton's bill. The financial assessment yielded about 13 different recommendations for improvement. One of the main ones was improving the current accounting system. And we actually have a kickoff meeting for that project tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And the board approved a project on December 3rd, funded by Title III, which is a federal support that HBCUs receive for capacity building and other enhancements to evaluate and basically a systems analysis of our accounting system and re-implement the portions that either were not implemented correctly when the system was put in 2011 or have not been properly maintained since 2011. And there's a combination of both, frankly, that's causing a lot of the challenges in reporting and timely reporting for the university. We're working to improve budgetary controls and reporting, and this accounting system revamp is projected to take about 18 months. But we're starting with the general ledger, and we're going to complete pieces as we go, and we hope to be able to see improvements by the end of the fiscal year, particularly in reporting. Another recommendation from CP I think that's significant is to develop a 5-year planning structure on the campus, where we're evaluating risks, we're evaluating opportunities, and we are thinking beyond the current year. How do we best, use the university's resources to help support our students and improve the university and our performance with our students? Chairman Ferris has called a session of our Board of Regents for February 3rd, where we're beginning this process, and we'll begin with essentially a budgetary and financial retreat. And we'll begin we'll bring a high-level planning structure and the beginnings of a 5-year planning structure in that meeting, and that will evolve throughout the remainder of the fiscal year as we formalize some of these processes. And speaking of that, a lot of the other recommendations that CPE had revolve around policies and procedures at the campus. The campus has procedures and policy manuals, but to be honest, they're out of date, many of them. Some of them the operational manual for finance dates to about 2010, which is actually before the new accounting system was implemented. And it's not a new accounting system anymore. It's 10 years old. So a significant project for this year is working with the council to revise those processes and policies and procedures, get them to a best practice state, and train staff and move forward with better processes across the board. And those areas are human resources, purchasing, travel, campus safety, endowment management, risk management, and cash management. And the last three were specifically mentioned in the CPE recommendations and will be a priority as we work with the council going forward. We anticipate some of these revisions being brought to the board in March, and hopefully all of them either by the end of the fiscal year or early in the next fiscal year. And as we mentioned before, we continue to work with the council on the other items in the management improvement plan. We also continue to work with them in an evaluation of the last 2 or 3 years and determining exactly what happened, and as we move forward, taking whatever steps we need to address those things. Quick update on the new residence hall, which many of you, if you're driving down East Main, you've probably seen the construction going on. It is a 408-bed housing and dining facility. Our first payment is due in March of 2024, and the average cost of the beds in the hall will be about $4,600 per semester, which is in line with the newer halls at the sister institutions throughout the state. And that is all I have, unless you would like to add anything, or I think that I think we're ready for any questions you might have, Chairman.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you all being here today. And as you understand, I get a lot of questions from my colleagues on a regular basis about what's going on with Kentucky State, about House Bill 250, and a lot of concerns. I want to reference an excerpt from the September 2nd meeting of the Board of Regents. And in the minutes, there was a presentation by President Thompson, and in the minutes records that he stated that CPE is working with CFO Greg Rush to make sure there is a grounded basis for the dollars KSU will be requesting. The plan will also be focused on culture to ensure that KSU doesn't get into another deep financial need. And that word culture has been used a lot in the last few months. And Chair Ferris, Regent Harness, President Stamps, I'd just like to hear from you what needs to change. What needs to happen at Kentucky State University for the university to move forward and to thrive?
So when you speak on culture, we think about the organization as a whole. And so as a marketing professional, I tell people all the time, culture starts internally. It's with your people. And so it's a re-education of the entire campus community internally first with our employees, making sure they understand the position, the mission, the founding and the history of the institution, making sure that they understand our commitment, not only to our students, but the Commonwealth, and making sure that in everything we do, we treat each other with respect. And so we start internally first with that, acknowledging that we have to be held accountable, not only for our actions, our inactions, and our non-actions. And so one thing we did at our fall encampment, we brought in specialists to talk about the organizational culture, talking about its people and what it means to what we do to our mission. And so we began that process. We also had an institutional survey that went out, was completed by our campus community. And everything we've done from that point, we have talked and communicated about what our responsibility is to Kentucky State University. So it's going to first have to start there with understanding, as the people of the institution, what our responsibility is to the Commonwealth. And so we've started those basic talks, and we plan to continue by bringing in experts and working with the campus community to move the institution forward. So just from that aspect of culture. But when you think about repositioning the institution, so that's going to be a deeper dive. And we've begun some of that work on campus by talking to the different areas to find out what they think we need to do differently, what we can do better to reposition Kentucky State University. And we will continue that work until we get our new president in. You don't want to launch something ahead of a new vision coming in. As acting president, it is my job to make certain we understand where we are, what we're capable of, and how we can move the institution forward. Suspending unnecessary travel, suspending unnecessary purchasing, making sure we understand our budget, working with our CFO to break down how the institution brings in and how we should spend our budget, because we don't get all of our finances in one lump. And so that's been very valuable to the campus community. And they feel like they have some input on how we're going to move the campus forward.
And I speak on behalf of the
Please.
Board of Regents.
Could you move the microphone a little closer to your chair?
Yes, thank you. To speak on behalf of the Board of Regents and our authority as a governing body, one of the things that we know that we have lacked since I've been on the board since 2014 is that a consistent implementation of our policies and procedures. We do understand that culture is the foundation of many of our organizations. As a former superintendent, one of the things that you always know is that people will do what you expect them to do. And a lot of our decisions and how we operate is based on our policies and procedures. When everybody understands what they are, and the expectations is that everyone will follow those, and your stakeholders and your community understands that, then I think that builds a different type of culture that we're operating in now. One of the analogies we used to use in P12 is that when you have a fish bowl and you have fish in the bowl and they're dying, then it's time to change the water. And I think that's where we are at Kentucky State University. We have to make some external and internal changes in order for us to build the culture that we want to see Kentucky State thrive in. And that's going to be internal and external in how we think about and how we see ourselves at Kentucky State University. That's all of us, students, faculty, alumni, and even our community of Frankfort, how they see Kentucky State. And some of that is going to be on, and a lot of that is going to be on how we operate from this point forward.
Thank you. For me, and the culture at Kentucky State University, I think, can be summed up in one word, which is leadership. You know, I'm a lifelong Frankfort resident. I've seen the highs and the lows of Kentucky State University my entire life, and I think if you look at it, the highs can be traced to strong, good leadership. And I think the culture of any entity, whether it's your church, your business, or whatever, starts at the top. And for me and for my remaining months as a regent on the Kentucky State University, my number one priority, and I think the priority of the board working with the search committee, is to find strong leadership who can come in and change the culture where it needs to be changed, and really will be on campus, will be there to listen to people, the students. And so for me, the culture at Kentucky State University It started to change with the oversight of CPE and interim president Stamps, but I really think where that's going to stop and start is with our next leader. And that's going to be a big task, but it needs to be done because KSU plays too important of a role for it not to happen.
Thank you all for your response, and I think you're absolutely right. It starts with leadership, and the decision on the new president is going to be critical, and I certainly hope and pray that you're successful in that. I do want to make a point to publicly state I want to thank Governor Beshear for issuing his executive order in a timely manner. I think it was prudent, it was necessary, and it's allowed us to get to this point where we are today, and I certainly appreciate that. And Greg, I know that you came from CPE. What's your future role at KSU and in the role of CFO?
I'll be leaving the university actually this week and returning to CPE in a role there. And we have contracted with an entity called the Registry, who places higher ed executives throughout the country, and have Dr. Gerald Shields, who will be taking over as the Chief Financial Officer for the university. President Stamps and I have a lot of confidence in him, and I've been spending the week with him. When I return to CPE, I have been told that I will essentially be back on campus next week. So I anticipate I will be there through the extent of the relationship between CPE and the university.
Thank you. I already knew that, but I thought it was important for everybody else to understand what was going on there. We have a question from Representative Graham.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will they leave having this Title III? I think you talked about it will deal with financial, academic, student financial, registration, tracking students, process. So if we get that, that would be in place, right? In terms of continuation, or is it a process of where it only goes to a certain period of time?
The funding that we're using from a federal standpoint is essentially to, I guess, repair the system, for lack of a better word. And so the ongoing costs are already encompassed in the university's budget. So
Things will be in place
mm-hmm.
in order to follow those guidelines, which update the whole system.
That's right.
I guess, and that will leave them with a kind of a written process and procedural manner in which they will be able to continuation of this new program.
Yeah, part of absolutely. One of the main goals of this project is to get written procedures essentially on everyone's desk that interacts with the accounting system. And this is a little bit bigger than just the accounting system. It's also our student information system, our student accounts receivable system, our registration system. So it's the ERP for the campus. And at the end of this, we want essentially desk manuals for every employee, and every new employee is trained to use the system before they're asked to go in and work with it.
And that goes back to, as we was talking about the culture, what we found was that there were the processes were there, but they weren't implemented with fidelity, or they were modified or customized to do whatever other people wanted them to do. And so it wasn't universally used how we purchased it, and it wasn't implemented with fidelity. So that will take place based on the processes and procedures and the training that will take place when we get all these pieces back in place, Representative Graham.
Representative Graham, could you turn your microphone on?
Oh, I'm sorry. You would think at this stage I would know that. And I just want to ask this last question. If there is a conflict between what CPE and the university thinks needs to be proceeding, how would that be resolved?
I guess that would be with the board.
But you're working with CPE.
As we have, right, and you're talking about the conflict. As we have moved forward from day one, there hasn't been. I think because of the same mindset that CPE sees and has for Kentucky State University, and I'm sure all of you all remember that Dr. Thompson was the interim president at one time, and the board, a lot of the board members that were there are still seated. And so far, all the conversations have been very open and been very robust, and I don't see there being any conflict, but if it is, I'm sure that the board and CPE will come to an agreement on what's best for Kentucky State University.
I would hope that, and I would think with the history of Greg Rush having worked at K-State and Aaron being the interim president, and the two of you on the board, and I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, and Mr. Vice Chair, for the work that you've been doing in terms of helping and being engaged in detail with all of this. So thank you all so much for the work that you're doing. We appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Representative. We have a question from Representative McCool.
Sure. If I had a little latitude, I got a couple of questions. Is that okay? Please, thank you very much. Oh, thank you for being here again. I know this can be nerve-wracking, but I want to say what I emphasized last time, and I really mean this, that Kentucky State University is vital to our state and to our students. And when I say our students, any student that attends the university is very critical. And I also want to thank you, even though I know you've been there for a while, Chair Lady and Vice Chair for the board, I thank you for not jumping ship. You know, this is a good time to sometimes you see that happen. And this can make you stronger. This can make the university much stronger, but there are some bumps in the road that you got to go through, and you know that. I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know. And last time we was together, I referred to, the SACS accreditation process. I hope you're still working with them. First question, are you under any kind of sanctions, warnings, or anything like that from SACS? Or they've not sent a letter saying we're going to come and visit you, which they can't do that, right? If you're not financially secure.
No, we are not on any sanctions or warnings, and we have not received any notification that they are going to come and review us, but we have been in communication with SACS. They're fully aware of our current circumstances, and we've provided them, just like any other entity that's viable for Kentucky State, with the necessary information to keep them up to date with our current status.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, I appreciate what you've done, Madam President. I really do. Speaking of SACS in this financial situation, and you're under a presidential search right now, I think, or getting ready to start one or something like this, I've got a concern that, this financial situation could make your pool a little bit smaller. I don't know that. You all, President Thompson, you may know much better than I, but I hope you do get good candidates in there. I hope maybe you considered it as well. So, I hope we get somebody in there with the passion and leadership to bring it forward. So, I've been involved in these presidential searches before, and you want to get the best for the university, and I know that. So thank you for sticking with that. A couple other quick questions, if I may. Got to put my eyes on so I can see. I just want to make sure that I'm correct. So, and I appreciate all. I want to say one other thing, Madam President, that I really appreciate you. Sounds like you're working with the faculty and staff as well. This is everybody's got a stake in the game at this, so they need to understand that. And I've been there. I understand that if you involve others, you'll find some solutions out there that one person may not have. So I appreciate if I understood that correctly, that where you're monitoring. And hopefully you're doing reconciliation on each budget area, so you'll be able to track that better and so forth. So some of the things I had concerns with, and maybe you've already addressed at some point in time, but I want to make sure I'm correct that under the position of the internal auditor, Kentucky State University was vacant for 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years?
In that range.
Do we know the dates they were vacant? Roughly,
we can get that for you, Representative McCool. Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact dates.
Okay,
but it was during this period.
Okay, You see how critical that position is. We know that. So somebody has to be leading the charge on that. And trust me, I've been through that too. And when they tell you that you can't do something, we shouldn't. You don't do it. Even if you're president or vice president, or whatever, I know I've been there. And you appreciate those that has the boldness and knowledge to come and tell you that. And hopefully there's no
Can I make
reprimand
one
for
more
that.
comment on
Yes,
that?
sir.
The one of the recommendations from the council that I didn't get into specifically was that the university consider a contract with an external firm to provide internal audit services, partly because it's hard for one individual to have kind of the range of expertise that you need to evaluate all the different things that can come up, whereas if we're using an outside firm and we need an IT audit, for example, they'll have resources available. So we're currently in the process of developing an RFP, which I think will be issued shortly, to start down that process.
Okay. Thank you. Now, for the board members, first of all, I think, Vice Chair, your term expires in 2022. Is that correct?
It does, June 30th of 2022.
And can you be reinstated? Or don't?
Well, I guess that'd be up to the governor.
Okay, I didn't know if there's a
you know,
timeline.
yeah,
And Madam Chair, I think yours is 2026 at this point in time.
Yes, I was just reappointed
Just
for a
reappointed.
second term.
So it's critical to have this background, the highs and the lows, if you're going to go forward with this. So not only do you serve on the board, but you also serve on the executive and audit committee within your board. So not having these audit reports in the future will not be an issue, because they will, I'm assuming that you will take charge of that and demand that happens, right?
Yes, well, we demanded it in the past. When I came on, I think it was 2016, and just to call it like it is, the lack of an internal auditor was a concern that we stayed on the past president about, as well as an external auditor and timely production of the audit reports prior to our meetings. I mean, there was a lot of cleanup. I mean, from the time I came on, and I had great confidence, obviously, in Greg Rush and Dr. Thompson, who were working hard to get past years cleaned up. So, but that's a long way to answer your question. The answer is yes, sir.
Well, and you also answered another question is, how did you you tried, and the administration evidently wasn't working as closely as they should have.
Well, I do think on the internal auditor position, there were courtships of people that kind of were lengthy that we thought would ultimately play out that didn't. I do recall that. But then as far as the external auditor, that took time, but I do believe that we ultimately got a well-recognized external auditor in, and we got on top of the past figures. And Mr. Rush can speak to that probably as well as I can, because he's dealt with them, I would say, weekly.
One of the challenges that I've seen for the past several years, and this goes back to my first tenure at the university in 2015, is we are not completing our external audit timely. The requirement is that audit be completed by early October. Over the last 10 years, the university has met that standard once. And to be fair, while I was CFO, we did not meet that standard for various reasons. And to me, this revamp and refresh of the accounting system is one of the most key things that we can do over the next year or two to correct that. Because when the board's receiving this information from the audit, sometimes up to a year late, it's a lot of water under the bridge in a year. And it's very hard for folks to keep up with what's happening at the university when this stuff is continually delayed.
Thank you. One final question, Mr. Chair, if I may. And I don't know, there's a proposal, I appreciate Representative Tipton's filing the bill to hopefully provide some funding, but, we don't know how that's going to go. But so do you have a plan in place in case it doesn't pass, and then a plan in place if it does pass? So we don't have this recurrence every so often, because I know in the past sometimes you had to come before the legislative body and ask for financial support, and that's okay. Do we have a plan in place if it doesn't pass, and then a plan in case it does pass?
As a state institution, we have limited options. And so as a result, the financial situation for the university, we are dependent on the General Assembly. I'll just lay it out. That is essentially the way it is. Now, as for going forward, we talked about the budget meeting on February 3rd. Even if the university receives the $23 million that's in Representative or Chairman Tipton's bill and that we've requested, that essentially gets the university back to zero. So the budget next year has to be dramatically revised to make sure that the university is living within the resources that it has available, and that's a firm requirement. There is no option. The university will not have sufficient reserves to continue to operate with their budget not balanced, and that's one of the things that we'll be working on over the next couple of months, is to make sure that whatever steps have to be taken to make that happen are taken.
Okay.
And as we have said in the last few months with CPE and the discussions we've had with them, that Kentucky State University can no longer operate as usual. And so there will be some tough decisions to be made with or without the $23 million. Kentucky State is still going to have to make some tough, hard decisions so that she can continue to operate within her financial means.
To serving the students.
To serve students, which is the first goal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. We have a question from Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I got a little line of sight issue here. Thank you very much. I picked the wrong chair, I believe, to view and see, listen to y'all's testimony and so forth. And I think I've stated this in the past when y'all came before. I really do appreciate y'all rolling up your sleeves and trying to right the ship from a financial standpoint. And it's not an easy pull to go down that process. And I know you're making a really strong, earnest effort in doing that. But I want to ask a question, and going back in history a little bit, because obviously I think the history is basically a product of where we are now, and I'm trying to put some pieces together. When did the board find out or come aware of a lot of these financial problems and situations coming up?
As we have reflected on where we are today, the board has gone back. We've pulled our minutes. We've pulled our videotapes of our meetings. And the board asked many financial questions of the prior administration. And as documentation from our minutes and the videos from our meetings, many of those questions that we asked about the financial status of Kentucky State University, we were given inadequate information or false information. And as you know, and as you all operate as a committee, that the board conducts its business in a public meeting. And so as a board of regents, we have to make decisions based on the information that we receive. So we were making our financial decisions on information that the administration was giving us. And we felt at that time, I thought that that was accurate information. But as CPE will say to you, and even as legislators, most of that information was inadequate or it was misrepresented by the administration. So when we found out and we had concrete evidence that there were financial concerns that we had to deal with as a board, we had a meeting and the board dealt with those issues, and that's when we decided that we had to go in a different direction with leadership.
So could you provide, now make sure my microphone's on, so could you provide a time frame when that occurred in terms of going through and asking questions and then starting to realize that things aren't being portrayed as they should be in terms of that? So if you can give me a time from that, and then in addition to that, what I'm trying to figure out and we're talking about the prior administration is President Brown. Is that
Yes,
correct?
he
Okay.
was the president.
So I guess when the contract was extended to him, my understanding, and on what I can tell, he resigned a month later. So could you tell me how all that transpired, given the time frames?
Well, at the time that the contract was renewed, he had an evaluation, and based on that evaluation, which was public, the consultant and the board had made the decision that he had met the matrix that was in his contract. However, in that evaluation, there were several financial recommendations also in that contract, in that evaluation that he was to work on. So after that, I, as the board chair, I was away on vacation and got a call from the general counsel that there was concrete evidence that there were some things amiss with the financial status of Kentucky State University. And when the board received that information and all of the board met and we saw that as a board, then the board decided that we needed to do something different.
Okay, so I'm trying to clear. So you received information. So he was going through the review. He met the matrix and so forth. Then after that, you received information that the reports have been falsified or not represented like it should be, but he was still extended that contract, and then he resigned after that because of what y'all confronted him with. Is that correct?
All I can speak to is that we received his resignation letter.
Okay. Okay, and this is after y'all discovered everything.
Yes.
And after that, y'all extended the contract.
Yes, after we had the special call meeting, and we received concrete evidence from our general counsel.
Okay.
And, I'd like to add to that for my time frame, and I'm really bad at years and all, and now I associate things with pre-COVID and post-COVID, or I try to. That's my time frame. But, one important thing for me, when SAC-COC came in to do its exhaustive review, I personally was, well, let's see what happens here. There hadn't really been any discussion at that point in time. We could see the audited financial statements. We were spending money to recruit more students. We knew that. SAC-COC came in and gave what I would consider probably a better report than we expected. I think we had one deficiency. And as a board member, that made me feel very good because, we questioned SACS. It was a deep dive in what I understood of SACS did and their team. It was a pretty deep dive on the university and what the university was doing. It was sometime after that there began to be discussions about vendors not being paid timely. I don't know exactly when that is, but those videos will speak for themselves and the questions that were asked at that time. And, to me, the question gets asked, are we paying our vendors on time? That is a yes or no. That you either you are or you aren't.
Yeah, black or white.
And yes, we're paying our vendors. Everything's there's no issues here. And okay. And then that evidence began to mount. Even in there, some tapes, the tapes, I want to say in late 2020, we had conversations, very detailed conversations about that and paying those vendors. And so I can't give you exact time frames, but that's how it played out for me. And then after that, after the fall of 2020, yes, there were discussions about extending the contract. We're right in the middle of COVID. I think we were very concerned. I was very concerned, and the Board of Regents were very concerned as what was going to happen. Were kids were going to quit coming to school? And so those discussions began. Yes, there was a vote to extend the contract with no increases of any nature. And as I understand it, that was at the request of President Brown. He wanted to have those discussions. We did extend it, and then it kind of all came to us.
So just one more question. Can you sort of outline, if you recall, the terms of the contract? You said there's no increases in pay, I assume. Was there any other terms that, like, in
As I
terms of how
recall
long?
it, everything stayed the same.
Everything
Everything, it
stayed the
was
same?
just really an extension of the prior contract.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate y'all coming. I know y'all going through a really strong, a really hard process, and it sounds like you have got some things at least going in a better direction. So I do appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Fleming. I know we've got some other members who want to ask questions, but I want to interject here and follow up on this conversation. And when you talk about the administration past leadership, it's not only President Brown, you had the Chief Financial Officer, Douglas Allen. Now, when did CFO Allen offer his resignation, before or after this information became available to the board?
Before.
So he offered his resignation before, and we're only talking just a few weeks before all this came about. Is that correct?
Yeah, his resignation was effective June 30th, although I believe he was off campus significantly before then.
Okay. And I believe President Brown's resignation was accepted, I think, toward the end of July, 21st, 22nd, something like that.
I think it was 20th.
Yeah, July 20th, something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
it was in, all this was in a very short time frame that you received this information. And of course, they're away from the university. Has anybody from the university had any contact with President Brown or CFO Allen since this transpired?
Not that I know of. I don't know.
I have had contact with CFO Allen.
Okay.
I have had to call him for some legal
I
matters.
understand. Now, in reviewing the minutes, CFO Allen, it looks like the April 16th, 2018 board minutes, that President Brown advanced his name at that time to be the Vice President of Finance and Administration, CFO. Was there an official search process at that time? Were there a pool of candidates, do you recall?
No, and I'll be honest about that one. I actually recruited Doug Allen to the university. I'd known him for several years at KCTCS, where he'd been in their accounting department, and quite familiar with him, and am very surprised how things turned out.
Okay. In your opinion, should CFO Allen had known, would he have been in a position, should he have known what was transpiring with the financial situation?
In my professional opinion, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we have a question from Representative Graham.
I really don't have a question. I just want the committee to know
Mike.
university is on a trajectory to get out of this and to move forward. And as I said earlier, back in the summer, this university is important to the institutions across the Commonwealth, the comprehensive institutions in particular, but the fact of the matter, it being a HBCU and how important it has played in the role of creating a middle class for those who have come up through the university and who've gone on to do wonderful things. And this university is an important part of this Commonwealth. And I would hope that we as a body here in the House, and I applaud the chairman of this board, and I support his bill, and I hope he will allow me to sign off on the bill as well, that we want to move forward as our theme is, onward, upward, forward. And so I thank all of you, because this is a tough situation, but we've got to work together. We need the university on board. We need the General Assembly on board. We need the leadership of the Commonwealth, and the governor is supporting it. And we need the leadership of our General Assembly. And I would hope that we can work together to get through this, because I know great things are there awaiting us as a university, but as a Commonwealth as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Graham, and you're most welcome to sign on the House Bill 250. Chair Farris, you mentioned that you couldn't give a reason as to President Brown's reason for delivering a letter of resignation. But my question is, did the board talk to President Brown, confront President Brown with the information you had before he submitted that letter of resignation?
And I'm sorry if I stated that I didn't know his reason. I'm just saying I didn't know he was going to at that time.
Right.
But yes, he and I and legal counsel had a conversation. As I said, I was out of the state at the time, and we had a three-way call with legal and him and myself. And when I returned to the state, he and legal counsel and I had a Zoom call, and he was very aware of the concerns that was presented to me as the chair. And from that time, moving forward, council and I made the decision that needed to come to the board. That was something the board needed to make a decision on, and we did meet. And at that time, all of the information that was received by general counsel was presented to the board. And from there, we had asked the president some information based on counsel's advice, that he had an opportunity to present his side. And from there, we were to come back to an additional meeting. And between that time and the next meeting, we received his letter of resignation. I will say that I had made a couple of phone calls because of my concern. And one of those phone calls was to CPE. And so I did have some discussion with Dr. Thompson around our concerns. At that time, of course, he didn't give me any advice. He just listened. And from there, I had a couple other phone calls with President Brown, and I was advised by legal not to continue the conversations with him. And so I did say to him that, our conversations would have to be in a public board meeting or closed session, but in a board meeting. And so from there, when we got his letter of resignation, I had also talked with our counsel, Dr. Bill Johnson, who I had worked with through the letter of resignation from President Brown. And so Bill Johnson was advising me on what President Brown was doing at that time. So from there, I said to Bill Johnson, we'll bring that letter of resignation to the board and we will act upon it. And that's what we did. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And this question's been asked to President Stamps and Greg Rush in the past, but we've got the board members here. In your opinion, based on the information you have to this point, was there any criminal activity involved in this financial situation?
To date, we have not seen any criminal activity, so not to my knowledge.
And I know I'm asking a legal question here. Do you all foresee any civil action that could be taken in regard to this?
Yeah, I can speak to, want to be very careful, but I can speak to what's in the public record. And I believe yesterday, President Brown instituted litigation against Kentucky State University in the Franklin Circuit Court. And yesterday, Kentucky State University filed a counterclaim against President Brown.
Thank you. I was not aware of that, and it brings me up to another question. We learn from history. Last couple of weeks, I've been reading through 4 years' worth of board minutes, trying to understand how all this played out. When you mentioned litigation, I had found from September of 18 through April of 21, 7 different references in the board minutes to where settlements were approved, and I guess that number concerns me, and it goes back to the first question about the culture of what's going on at Kentucky State University, and I guess how many current litigations is Kentucky State University involved in? Do you know that number?
We'll have to get that for you off the top of my head. I don't know. We'd have to get with our general counsel.
Sure,
I can
sure.
tell you it's fewer than in the past.
Okay. And I hope you understand the reason I'm asking that question. When I see this, it just concerns me. What's going on that has caused all these litigations to be brought forward? Now, I understand the ones you just mentioned. I understand what's going on there, but that's just something that's caused concern. As I've reviewed the minutes, you all have did a lot of discussion about the presidential performance review process and how it works. Could you share a little bit about how that process has worked and maybe how you foresee it being changed in the future going forward with a new president?
Well, initially, when I became board chair, there was not a presidential evaluation process on the books. And from what I can remember, we had not had an opportunity as a board to evaluate any president since I was on the board until President Brown was hired. That's when we start doing annual presidential reviews because that's what the policy states. From there, myself and general counsel, we looked at different universities and we kind of crafted the performance review process. We took some pieces from UK and EKU and came up with that review process, and we did that on an annual basis. I would like to state that President Brown's contract was not crafted by this board. It was crafted by the previous board chair, and the board was, as from my knowledge as a board member at that time, we were not involved in that crafting of that contract. But based on that contract is what we had to evaluate him on. So there were some goals and metrics in there, and we did everything we could to be as fair and as, rather than subjective, objective as possible. And we wanted to be fair to the university and as well to the president. And I feel very confident that we did that as a board. And the entire board was involved in that process all the way through. We did hire consultants to come in and conduct those evaluations for us. And I would say that 2 out of the 3 years we were pleased. The 1 year we were not so pleased with the consultant. But with that being said, that's pretty much how the evaluation process went forward, and it was approved by the board, and there is documentation how that occurred. And we followed and tried to be fair to the objectives and matrix that were in the contract at the time.
In your March 5th, 2020 board minutes, there's a reference that a proposal was approved from consultant Raymond Cotton in reviewing and developing presidential contract and performance evaluation instruments. Is that the consultant you were referring to?
No, we did not move forward with that contract. We had 3 different consultants that did the evaluation, one being a Dr. Rennick, the last one was a Dr. Charlie Nams, and one was a Dr. Anderson. But the contract with Dr. Cotton, we did not continue with that contract on that compensation because some other things were going on. So we did not continue that contract. We did not approve that contract.
Thank you. Representative Graham has another comment or question.
Mr. Chairman, I tell you, at this point, I don't have a comment right now.
Okay. Yeah. Representative McCool, I believe you have another question.
Yes, sir, if I could, please. Thank you. Got two, if I may. Do you have a foundation and funding that you can also access if you have monies in that too with the university? Is it strong, solid?
There is a Kentucky State University Foundation, which is a separate entity, but is established for the support of the educational mission of the university. And a lot of their funds, as most foundations are tied up in donor agreements related to scholarships.
Okay.
But obviously, we will be working with the foundation for any, and this is something that will continue when I'm with CPE, working with the foundation to determine whatever resources are available to the university and can be used to help with the budget over the next couple of years.
Just another resource, and they got stake in the game too. One other quick question, and this, I don't want to throw Dr. Thompson under the bus here or anybody else from CPE, but you know, and I appreciate CPE coming in and helping and providing that guidance. Has there been any thought about maybe that CPE needs to be involved in the presidential search, and maybe you are, or even the evaluation of the presidents of the colleges, universities?
CPE actually is Travis Powell, the Vice President and General Counsel of CPE, is the chair of our presidential search. And pretty much we have a consultant, Mike Breyer, who is also conducting that. And so the board gave them the autonomy to conduct that president search. So CPE is very much a part of and really conducting, with assistance from the consultant, the search for us.
And just to add another link into it, President Thompson, I don't know if this would throw you under, add more to your plate or not, but if there's some way that the CPE could have an evaluation of the presidents too, I think that would be helpful. It's just another watchdog, you know, for the plan. And I don't know if that's allowed or whatever, but just a thought.
President Thompson, to be consistent with policy, if you're going to speak, could you identify yourself for the record, and I'll swear you in?
Don't get up. Aaron Thompson, President of the Council on Postsecondary Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Indeed, I do, sir.
I thank you, sir. Please proceed.
I think it is important, a couple of things. We are heavily involved in this presidential search, and to be honest with you, Representative McCool, the point you make is a very valid point. CPE has data, knowledge, and a variety of things that can help any campus with understanding at least the statewide perspective, and we have with a lack of a better phrasing, a third-party way of looking at this. I mean, we're not involved in the day-to-day activities, but we can look at it from a vantage point that very few organizations have the power to look at it. We can, and questions were asked, and I'll just go on record to say that the information that the board had asked for and CPE had asked for in the prior administration, we got information there that we found to be somewhat problematic. We didn't understand it, to be honest with you, because it wasn't aligned in a way that we at least saw it. But this board did ask the questions, and they got the answers. In my opinion, the answers were not the correct answers. So in that regard, I think in an evaluation process or a presidential search, we can offer, you know, not that I want more work, as you all know, I got a little bit already, but the idea that we do have some material and offer and information and opportunity to offer a third-party perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. And I just think it'd be, again, just another, makes it stronger as a whole, more people looking at it, at whatever it is, whichever university or college that it is. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do have another question. Could you share with us how the committee structure works with your board, what committees you have, how often you meet, and how the committees interact with the board and how that structure works?
Right offhand, I think I might have it. It is designated in our bylaws, the number of committees that we have. And one of the things that we have, and we have discussed this several times, is that what we had done in the past, as I said, I've been on the board now and I'm going on almost 8 years, long time. But so I have seen different reiterations of how the committees have worked. So let me kind of give you a little history, background on that. When I first came on the board, the committees met on a Thursday, and the board met on a Friday, I think that's how it was. But we had like the committee meetings the day before. What we found, or what I saw, was that sometimes the attendance wasn't as it needed to be because you have board members who are full-time whatever. So when we restructured and then the committee meetings started to happen the morning of the board meetings. Well, from those committee meetings, I will just be very candid, not a lot of work happened in those committees. And so that's one of the areas we're looking at as we're restructuring and working with CPE, is what is the best committee structure, especially for Kentucky State University. These structures may work well for other universities, but we know from history that it doesn't work well for us. And so we're looking at how to restructure our committee the days we meet so that it will really be working committees. And so Dr. Thompson and I have had some discussion, but we haven't solidified or confirmed anything of what it's going to look like. I will say, Chairman Tipton, that we do have some concerns around attendance of some of our board meeting members. And so we're trying to accommodate those appointed members so that we can get them at the meetings and they are engaged in the work. And sometimes that has been a concern or issue for us, is having those members in attendance at the meetings and engaged in the work. So I know that's a long way around what you're asking, but right now our committees are not meeting, and that has been a decision from Dr. Thompson and I, because we weren't doing real work. So now we just doing all the work in the open public meetings.
I appreciate that answer, Chair Ferris. And the reason I ask that is any organization, even here in the General Assembly, the committee structure is so vital.
Yes, sir.
That you can get so much work done, and I encourage you, in cooperation with CPE, to try and get that done. I guess I do have concerns about your comments about board member attendance. When you accept the responsibility, and when you get that title, there is a responsibility that comes with that. So I hope you're successful in that. It's my understanding, is there one current vacancy on the board right now?
We do have one appointed vacancy.
Okay, that's what I thought. And you have, as I understand, there are 3 non-appointed positions. I believe it's a staff, a faculty, and a student position.
Yes.
On the board.
Yes.
And how many appointed members are there on the board?
8.
There are 8. Okay, so 8 appointed, 3 non-appointed. One follow-up question. The comment was brought earlier about the foundation. In reviewing the minutes, and I believe it probably was in the fiscal year 2020, your audit was delayed because you could not get the audit from the foundation. And I saw several references to that. Was that issue corrected, and is it addressed going forward?
Yes is the short answer. The longer answer is that was probably overstated, that the university audit was delayed by the foundation audit. I think there was more going on than that.
Okay. Fair enough.
But the foundation audit was received.
I just had seen that in reviewing my minutes. Does any other member have a question at this time? Well, I'll make this comment. We want Kentucky State University to succeed. And I kind of envision there are difficulties, but I've learned in life when you have challenges that also presents opportunities. And it's my hope and goal that this is an opportunity for KSU to rebuild, rebrand. I'll use one of the modern terms, KSU 2.0. and just to try, because there are so many needs out there. The state has so many needs. We need nurses. We need educators. We need people working in government. You got such a great land grant program with the agriculture in your extension program. There's a lot to offer, and we want you to succeed. And that's why I've brought House Bill 250 to the table, because I understand the importance of it. But with that, go ahead.
Can I just say, I want to thank you for working with the university and in discussions with the university. You have worked and tried to be fair and objective. And I just, on behalf of myself as a graduate, but as a colleague of yours, I want to thank you for the leadership that you have provided to us, as well as working with us. So thank you, and thank you all for your service to the university.